All right, my friends. We are going to kick things off on the main stage with our first panel of the day, the Secret Lair Soundscapes of John Avon. A multi-sensory experience coming your way, masterminded by the creative genius of one of Magic's most prolific artists, John Avon, who is here with us in the building. He's going to be having a chat about some of the work that he does. But before that, I'd like to introduce to the stage my good friend from Rhystic Studies. It's Sam Gaglio to open up the proceedings for our first panel of the day. Please welcome him to the main stage here in Las Vegas.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, like Riley said, I'm Sam from Rhystic Studies. Today we have a very, very special event, one of a kind. It's the first of its kind, and it is, like Riley said, we're calling it the Soundscapes of the Secret Lair. It's a work of John Avon. To set the scene, I want you to sort of get cozy in your seats. This is an art installation. It is a multimedia experience, and the concept is, okay, for 25 years, 27 years, John has been getting commissions to do paintings for Magic, something he's very used to. He took it a step further with a twist, and they presented this opportunity to then go and say, okay, you have your paintings, now let's turn those into musical pieces. So we're going to walk through 4 separate cards, the cards you will know. We start with Progenitus. Progenitus is a gigantic creature looming on the horizon, and John creates a soundscape that wants to tap into the fear that you might feel when you look across the horizon and see Progenitus. From there, we segue into Brainstorm. Brainstorm is a surreal, dreamlike experience. It's anchored by his son, James, who is the model in the video that you will see. And he is keeping us sane. He is keeping us grounded. The music matches this sort of disorientation. After that, we go to Emrakul, who is just horror incarnate, an inconceivable, eldritch-esque monster. The musical soundtrack is trying to drive that sense of, it's already over. You have no hope. Finally, we end with Sarah Angel, who is, of course, the ascension, the reverence, and very special. It's an honor of John's that his wife, Pat, was the model for Sarah Angel. I want you to really tap into this moment when we get to Sarah Angel, because John told me it took him months to get those final notes of that song correct, to give this sense of resolve. John and his wife are in the audience today. They're going to be watching the installation. I hope you tuck in, get cozy, really cue into the music, enjoy the visuals, after which John and I are going to have a talk about how he does what he does and why, okay? So please enjoy. It's my great honor to present this to you. Thank you. Okay, everybody. That's awesome. Please keep it going for John Avon. John, come join me on the stage. Come on up. Wonderful. Well, welcome to Las Vegas. The last time we were together, it was in Barcelona on the other side of the world, and we had a lovely conversation about your life and your involvement in magic. And some of that came through in the paintings. Before we get into the details, I'd really love to discuss what you were feeling when they approached you with this idea, not just to do 4 paintings, again, something you've done a lot, but also to, create music and create animations.
Is my mic working?
Mic is working.
Okay, sorry. Before I answer that, can I just say thank you to all the staff for inviting me to do this, and to
thank you.
all the members of staff. I can't remember their names because my mind's gone completely blank. I can see them over there somewhere. But Guy, my agent, myself are so grateful to have been asked to come to all these conventions, and also to allow me to do this thing, which I didn't really know what I was doing half the time.
Yeah. So, what was your approach? Again, you've created paintings for a long time, and you've been making music for a long time. Was it difficult to bridge that gap, to say, okay, now I have Progenitus the painting, let's turn it into an audio track? How did that feel for you?
It felt like something that I always knew I would do at some point in my life. So the transition between having an idea and actually carrying it out are 2 completely different things. Because to actualize something that you're just thinking about, there's a huge gulf in between of effort and risk-taking. And I kind of thought, as this Secret Lair had been delayed for so long for this huge Vegas event, quite a few months ago I had various tracks which were forming, and I thought, well, that would fit these various 4 pieces. And then I could just see in my mind's eye various stages in the development of my paintings that would fit the music, so it was a constant toing and throwing, whatever the word is.
Yeah. But again, this was kind of a new experience for you. Can I ask you just something very honest? Like, were you a little bit afraid of doing this? Is there a little bit of fear at the front end of this to take on a project that you can't see the end of?
Yep, huge amounts of fear. And as we talked about in Barcelona, taking a risk and doing something from your heart involves being prepared to run a risk of all kinds of reactions and people ignoring what you do or liking what you do or just being completely indifferent. But most creative artists, painters, writers have elements of a polymath to them, where they tend to like to swap between areas. And because I've played music for as long as I've done art, it was a logical thing to do. But joining the dots to be here to do this did involve a lot of fear and anxiety, and I've still got that right now sitting here, because all I can see are all the things that are slightly wrong with everything, which is my curse.
But that is the artist's curse, correct?
It's a complete curse. And if I knew how hard it would be to have done this, I probably wouldn't have done it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of John's resounding messages in Barcelona was the sentiment of taking on a challenge that you can't see the end of, saying yes to projects, commissions, opportunities that you trust you can do, but really don't know how you're going to get to the end. And this was one of those projects. And that was part of John's message to the audience there, was like, you must jump fully in, even if you don't know where it's going to go. The sentiment of the journey is the purpose. And this was your opportunity to practice what you preach, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you have to pay the piper, right?
So I heard in an audiobook a couple of weeks ago that if you think of the result too much, you won't do it. So I was very much focused on the result. But because I'm a professional person and I said to the staff, I'll do it, I then realized the best thing to do, as it said in this audiobook, is to just do one bit at a time. And of course, when you're doing anything like this, you can only do life one stage at a time. So you can't think of the results, you've got to just build it. So that's how I've done these. I just want to say that 2 months ago, I'd never done any direction of video at all. So I relied heavily on our sons, Laurie and James, to physically put it together, but of course I had to art direct it. And the backstory about how this happened is that all the imagery you see here was all done on an iPhone as I was painting them. So I didn't have all the digital files in the background to sort of do all the chopping around, so that was a huge disadvantage. So I had a meeting with my wife, Pat, who's over there somewhere, and she said just to go with what I've got as opposed to not going with what I haven't, which that's a better way of saying that. So that's why you're seeing all the palettes and my airbrush. So it's a very honest, visceral journey of what happened. And if it's unique and different, then that's just how it is.
That's one of the beautiful details about the presentation, something that as Magic players we see the final painting on the cards. We got an insight into almost every single step, and you saw how it was built back to front. I love the shots of John's tools. John's been working in Airbrush for a long time in his career, even before Magic. And there's a lot of meticulous, negotiating with the materials as it's coming to life. In all of the elements of this slideshow, I saw that negotiation. Of course, the artist will always see the imperfections and the moments where it threw a punch that you couldn't counter. But I love getting a little bit behind the scenes. It's so rare that we get to do that, and you have to trust the process. I mean, you were painting this slowly, one by one, for commissions, and we saw every inch of that. So.
And you know only too well about video because you did a video of my work quite a while ago, and I didn't realize how hard it was, because when I saw the inside of Premiere and the other one,
After Effects and Premiere,
After Effects, it was mind-blowingly complicated, and I'm so lucky to have two sons who were able to mechanically assist it to happen. And of course, one second is over in a second, but the animated bits just took forever.
Forever.
Even though they're only there for 6 seconds.
And that's true of your paintings too. They take forever. They take so long. Let's talk about one of these. This is Progenitus. This is a new vision of Progenitus. And what was going through your minds? What were you using as reference photos to sort of pull this to pull this together?
I very much wanted my Progenitus not to be necessarily hundreds of miles away, so it's a little bit of a closer up, smaller one. And when I was doing my reference, I looked through various books on forest fires for some reason. I came across an Australian bushfire where there were little twigs in the foreground, and because I work with a very strong foreground, middle ground and distance, I saw the twigs as baby progenituses. Progeniti.
Yeah.
and this whole painting was called Rise of the Babies, as in Rise of the Machines, as in the Terminator film. So I thought it'd be very cool to have them in the foreground and then a massive one behind. And the dream of mine was to have them animated, which is what James did. He went away and puppeted them, so they all do this. So I was tweaking the music as I was doing the videos. So it was all very much all happening at the same time.
Yeah. And you mentioned to me that the musical side of this was really built from the drums. That was kind of the foremost instrument.
So my sound engineer, Pepper, who's a great friend of mine, I said, can you just give me some huge, massive drum tracks? And so the core of all the drums on this track is his work, which I then tweaked, because I wanted this track to be huge and massive. And there were going to be loads of guitars, but I never got around to doing it. It's all keyboards.
Yeah.
So the main instrument I can do doesn't feature on any of this music.
Wow.
So that's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And this is Progenitus on the card. This is my favorite of the bunch. It's hard to pick favorites, but especially after watching the animation again, knowing that's your son James, the beautiful zoom in right at the ends of James playing the instruments backwards, and the sort of trippy dreamscape you assembled. This is reminiscent of your work before Magic, right? Compositionally speaking.
Yeah. When Tom Jenkott offered me to do this work, because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, within reason, of course, I harked back to my earlier work in the 80s when I did lots of faces, as we saw in Barcelona. Because I quite like that simple way of designing things, I just wanted to have a figure having a brainstorm, as in that. At the very last minute, when I was sorting out the reference, I decided to go completely insane, and because I have very weird dreams, which I won't go into the details right now, but in my dreams, lots of things are backwards and don't make sense. So we got my wife's cello and my mandolin and my acoustic. So we'd have him looking at himself playing an instrument backwards. And then we added in him feeding a duck, as you do, then having a coffee with a mug upside down.
Yeah.
And I knew on social media people wouldn't understand. So I just thought, that's okay, I will stick with my madness. Yeah.
Good, good. In terms of materials, is this also airbrush, like the book covers you used to do?
It's airbrush and acrylic, yes.
And acrylic.
It's the long way to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I can ever do any more that way again, but I always say that, because it's hard to make mistakes. No, hard to make changes. You can make loads of mistakes, but the changes are harder.
Yes, correct.
Yep.
And how about the audio track for Brainstorm? What were you thinking in terms of matching this surreal quality? I guess one last detail on the composition, when you zoom out to card size, sometimes it helps if you squint your eyes a little bit. You can sort of see the main shapes. There's a circular kind of pattern all the way around that kind of gravitates toward the center, which I think is beautiful. But since you were here, you got to see those tiny details of the team playing their instruments backwards, sipping from a coffee mug upside down. How did you want to bring that sensation out in the music?
This track drifts a lot, so it's very much a backing track. So I wanted the imagery to emerge alongside the imagery, and I was a little bit worried about that there wasn't enough specific melody line, but then when we choreographed the video, it just makes sense because a dream is very abstract.
Yeah.
So I'm running the risk of not putting a specific melody line in the middle of everything, but a lot of the music I listen to is soundscape based anyway. So that's my favorite one in the 4, because you're just going on a weird trip.
Yeah. This is a trip. Emrakul is notorious for bending minds and staying largely inconceivable. We have an Emrakul fan in the audience. What we have is a Dutch angle. We have this tilted sideways disorienting effect. What was important for you with this painting? Threat.
I like the idea of, because this has been done so many times so well, just basically destroying everything. I thought, what would be more scary than to see it about 2 miles away, about to destroy everything? Because then you've got that, what do we grab the cat and my iPhone and the family photographs and run like hell? And that was the subtitle of this painting, Run Like Hell.
Run Like
Hell. There were some figures running. So mine was very much a couple of miles away, about to do its Imrakilness.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize up until last week that Imrakil was a female.
Yes, correct. Yes.
I thought he was a male.
Nope.
But it's not, it's a female.
Right. Yep. if we could quantify Eldrazi, there, you know, this is just the projection of them.
We can move on from that.
Exactly. Similarly, what were you thinking about in terms of the audio here? Because it has to separate a little from Progenitus, who is also a gigantic monstrosity, but...
The soundtrack to this, I deliberately, it's quite an uncomfortable track. The drums are quite sharp, and again, Pepper worked on a lot of the drumming parts, and they're quite electronic, and they've got an uncomfortable element. So it's quite hard for me to not mix all that out, but I wanted to leave it quite edgy. And when Laurie worked on, that's our elder son, worked on Emrakul, he very much left quite a lot of the elements of the spookiness to it, hence the palettes at the beginning. So he kept it quite, it's a threat and a fear, which is what this lady does.
Of course, and that is the artistic experience too, right? Finally, the Ascension. I hope you tuned into those final notes. I find them so moving. This is Sarah Angel, and like we mentioned prior, this is your wife Pat. What does this painting mean for you? What were you thinking about when you decided to start painting it? This is very close to your heart.
I experimented with doing the usual flying angel with a sword, and I thought that's been done so many times, there's no point in trying to do it better, because I can't. So I had the idea, I was sitting in the lounge and I was looking across, and I thought, how would it feel to have an angel just appear about as far away as that screen? So you're sitting there, and there is Sarah Angel over there. And so it's a very personal, intimate conversation with two. I kind of don't want to say what the other figures are. I've got ideas. I'd rather leave that to interpretation. So I wanted it to be a discourse, and the light is the exchange. The main thing is I wanted to show love.
Yeah.
Just simple love and affection, but strength at the same time. Because my wife is a very loving, kind, but very strong person, and she's helped me through so many challenges physically and psychologically. This is just about her.
This is a moving, it's a moving painting. Again, seeing it come to life and just these subtle light flares. I want to congratulate on achieving that. I know that the software fought you, but it really added that really intimate touch to the painting. When you showed this to your family, how did they respond?
Well, they see it all emerging, so there's no, I suppose there is the bit where I say it's done, but they've kind of seen it done for weeks anyway.
Yeah.
I think this whole project has been very much a family affair. So to have all the Avons involved in this project, it's just a beautiful experience. Because though I'm not retired, I'm semi-retired. I'm working as best I can. So it feels like I'm at the autumn of my career. And this painting, I was quite unwell when I was doing it, and I genuinely at one point thought it was the last one I'd do. But it's not. I've done others since, and I finished the artist series, as it was called. I just want to make special mention for my airbrush that pops up in the video all the time, because a lot of people don't even know what an airbrush is. You see the icon of it in Photoshop, but my old airbrush it's been in duty for 40 years now, and it's gradually starting to wear out, rather like my body, so my airbrush is collapsing. I do have a new one that I've bought, which will take over, but the videos feature my airbrush so much because it is my right-hand tool. No, my whatever the phrase is.
Sure, that's right.
It's not just paintbrushes and paint, because I'm mixing paint from my palette straight into those little cups. And a lot of modern-day airbrushes don't work like that, whereas I do it literally painstakingly, just tiny bits of colour. That's why the videos show so many of the little pots, which is the way I work.
Yeah.
And I don't make those anymore.
Wow. So that airbrush has been with you through your whole career in
My
terms of
entire
painting.
career, it's literally been working for 40 years. It actually stopped, and I took it apart, and there were little tiny screws, about 1 millimeter big, which I managed to get it to go again. A little.
Yeah. So to zoom out and sort of come to a conclusion before we open up for Q&A, do you have a favorite of these pieces? It's a simple question. I know it's impossible to answer, but which one sticks out to you now, being removed from the actual work?
The favorite would, of course, be Sarah Angel and Imrakul, and all the others I want to go and carry on finishing them, because when you work digitally, you can polish the stone and just keep going. When you do something by hand, there's a point where you can't push it any further. So the uncomfortable bit for me is that when I took the photographs of the painting, I sent them off to Wizards, having adjusted them to the colours of the originals. There's another part of me that wants to go and spend another couple of weeks digitizing and finishing them, but I didn't, because I wanted them to look natural and real. But it's still very uncomfortable because I want to go and finish them, and maybe I will. There'll be an on steroids version. So, sorry, that didn't really answer your question, did it? Maybe it did.
The famous Da Vinci quote, "Dime se mai fu fatta alguna cosa," which is, "Tell me if anything was ever finished. Tell me if anything was ever done." There's a sense of that, Maybe you resonate with that looking back on these pieces.
Well, life is like this because if it's all going to be fine now and the struggle's over, what do you do after that?
Now what?
I mean, a lot of the most unhappy people in the world are the people who've kind of achieved their ambitions and then they think that's it. But there is always more to do, or more to feel, or more to experience. It doesn't have to be doing, but it can be experiencing and meeting people. And that's what I love about Magic the Gathering, is I get to meet so many lovely people.
Yeah, same. It's exactly how I feel. Well, like I mentioned in Barcelona, it's always been an honor to speak with you. I'm so happy that I could be involved.
We've only spent time on stage together.
That's true. Yeah. Next time we'll grab a pint and you could tell me what you really want to tell me, right? We'll talk about the hard stuff together. Yeah.
Arm wrestle.
That's right. Yeah. Well, first an arm wrestle. Yeah.
It says 12 over there. What does that mean?
It means we've got 12 minutes for Q&A. If you have a specific question for John, the microphone is on that side. If you want to just step up to the microphone, we can form a line. Enunciate well so I can hear you, and of course, if you have questions for John, now is the time.
Absolutely, no one wants to ask me anything.
That's not true, look.
Oh.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, there's the line, we're here. First, I want to thank you for all of the...
Speak a little closer to the mic, thank you.
First, I want to thank you for all of the artwork that you've done for Magic over the years. Your artwork convinced me that Magic was something that I would fall in love with, and it's kept friendships for my entire life, thanks to your start.
Thank you.
So with
tiny bit closer to the mic. Keep going.
With your artwork being so personal to me, I really want to thank you, and I want to ask you about what it was like to finally have a chance to do an artist series that was so personal to you. How was that different, or what was that opportunity like when you heard that that was something you were able to do?
It's an opportunity to do magic without a very specific art director sending you a brief. So all of the lovely artists over there, we all get an assignment. So we stick to the assignment with the style guide. In this particular case, Tom Jenkott kind of literally said, do whatever you want to do. So that swings both ways. You can look at the other versions and then just try to do it your own way. But you are taking a risk, because you will get people saying, that's not the way it should be. And it's because it's been done so many times before, you're taking a risk. But this just felt like a beautiful opportunity to make magic as personal as I could. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I want to thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the panel, John and Dr. Gaglio.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask if you could expound a bit on what you were saying earlier about your soundscape and how you wanted to incorporate guitars. Your synth and your percussion I really loved it. But just that letting go of when you have an idea but you just can't quite incorporate it and rolling with the punches.
Yeah, on the guitar front, that's my main instrument, and I was going to add all the guitars, but I'd done so much of the keyboards and I came to do them, and there was nothing more to do. And just on that note, some of the guitar you do hear in the background is me with my iPhone at 4 o'clock in the morning with my electric guitar playing the idea into my iPhone, and then I put it into Logic Pro, but I left the scratchy demo in there because it just sounded nice. But I'm sorry if that hasn't answered your question.
Well, that discretion takes a lot of discipline, so I really respect that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I held back, which is hard for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you both again for your time. I'm a big fan of both of your work, so thank you. My question was, something I noticed during the previews I really enjoyed was the flavor text. And I wanted to ask John, did you write the flavor text? And if so, is there anything you could comment about the process? And if
So you're talking about the text on the cards?
the italicized text at the bottom, yeah.
I did. I don't believe I was allowed to with Emrakul, but the one about on Sarah Angel is basically what it is. It's about grace and love. But the very quirky one about the blue one, which is called Brainstorm. Sorry, my brain is having a storm. That relates to. I'm sorry, I can't remember the text. So
it was about the ducks and the tea.
Yeah, it's just me being silly. And actually, Guy, my agent over there somewhere, he actually helped me to write it. We deliberately left it a bit strange. It's quite important sometimes to not give everything and just let people try to work it out. It will irritate people sometimes, but it's nice to let people do a bit of work themselves. So,
Yeah.
is that okay?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're reading the flavor text. I've trained you well, you know. It's all I read now. Yeah. Wonderful. Yes, our last question.
Hello, I just wanted to say thank you for coming out. My friends and I are huge fans. We've always enjoyed your art. And one of the things that really stood out to me was this Airbrush tool that you've used a lot throughout your career. Now, what makes this tool stand out that you've kept for so long versus what you said earlier about moving on to newer tools like a different airbrush?
So I started off as an oil painter, which meant you could blend with great big brushes. And then I realized when I started my art career that using oil paint and sending paintings up to London when they're not dry was a very challenging thing. So I moved over to acrylics, and because acrylics dry quickly, the only way you can get gradations is by spraying down paint. So when I moved over to digital art, I already knew how an airbrush worked and performed, but when you're working digitally, you can create a mask where you can see what's happening on the other side. Whereas when you're doing it by hand, it obliterates the other side. So it's actually quite an annoying way to work, but it's the only way to spray down color. So that's why on these videos you see the masks. But an airbrush is a beautiful tool, but the annoying thing about airbrushes is that they clog up all the time. So most airbrush artists spend 50% of the time trying to clean them and keep them going. And I really learned how to swear very heavily when I bought an airbrush, because they're really annoying, because you've got this tiny bit of paint coming through a tiny nozzle. And I'm quite pleased to see the back of the damn thing. But it does come back occasionally when I do them by hand again.
Yeah. And there's something, too, about just hanging on to an instrument you've had a long time. You know, you have a rapport with that.
Well, I absolutely love that, piece of kit because it's been with me throughout all my pieces, well, most of them. And there is a tangible energy to an object. So this iPhone will be redundant in a couple of years' time, whereas a little piece of metal is kind of ancient technology. It's not that it's more important than this, it's just that this is a disposable thing. As a piece of metal will go on forever. It's an old artifact. That was a very long ramble.
No, that was exactly on point. And you ended with a magic term. Well done. Artifact, yeah. We got there. We came full circle. Thank you for your question. That was a great question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're at the very end here. One more announcement. Of course, John has his booth. You can see it from right here. He will be spending his time there. Although the cards will not be available until October, the Secret Lair drop is, I believe, October 2nd. You can pass by John's booth. He has some materials that relate to the Secret Lair right now. Get some cards signed, and of course, just thank John for all he's done for Magic. Again, this is an honor for me. Thank you for spending time with us this morning, and we both hope that you have a wonderful weekend, okay? So thank you. Appreciate it one more time. We're ready.
Thank you.